So let's straight away go into the panel discussion, and our two eminent panelists will answer the questions. So I will start off with you, Mr. Pubudu. Despite having a challenging year last year, that is 2021, the apparel industry has shown remarkable resilience. What are some of the factors that are shaping the manufacturing industry?
First of all, I would like to thank First Capital and Vivanta for inviting us. I would like to give some context in the question. So if you look at global apparel market was 1.5 trillion in 2020, and this is expected to be 2.2 billion range in 2025. So there is a considerable growth in overall apparel market. So if you look at in the Sri Lankan context, in 2019 we achieved 5.3 billion US dollars, and in 2020 this came down to 4.1 due to COVID related reasons. And then 2021, which is last year, January to December period, we achieved 5.1 billion US dollars. So to be exact, it's 5.07, but approximately 5.1. So there are multiple factors and dynamics happened during last year as well as in the current context. One of the main factors affecting industry is China-US trade war, with something that we all aware of it. And then, we already discussed in the presentation, Xinjiang cotton ban. That is also another factor. And the customers are, especially US customers, are very particular in Xinjiang cotton due to labor-related issues that has been banned. So there is a cotton price increase as a result of that partially. So then the other one is, which in the presentation also highlighted, China plus one strategy. So that is well understood. So that is another, basically customers are looking at alternative locations other than China because of dominating impact. And then the areas that we can work on is increased capacity. We can take scale advantage, economics of scale. Still, if you look at our industry, our country compared to China is very small. We don't have that much of scale advantage, but still we are competitive, and that is how we have capitalizing our market. And then some of the solutions that we have given, for example, like speed solution, things like that we have given in order to capitalize in the market. We had multiple challenges like logistic related issues. COVID was that was affecting all over other countries as well. So it's not something only to us. And then in the presentation, again discuss about ethical fashion side of it. Ethical, that has become a hot topic. And as you know that Sri Lanka as a destination has ethical sourcing. Our tagline, which JAF has come up, is garments without guilt. So that is for that, actually we have gained the recognition, and to a greater extent we have been living with that. So we have created Made in Sri Lanka as a brand and destination for ethical sourcing. And then compliance and sustainability is another area that all the customers and even vendor partners and textile mills are working on. Circular economy, circular fashion has become a hot topic to reduce natural resources as well as reduce wastage factors. And then finally, the garments or the apparel are not going into landfill. Instead, it's going for input as another sector or another industry. And also, the manufacturers are focusing on the three-piece bottom line, which is people, planet, and profits. The other important factor is innovation part of it. So, regardless of the industry, I think innovation is important to be in the trend. And then, as discussed in presentation, at least segment is key, and that has come up, especially in work from home scenario. So the comfort wear is important. So these factors have changed from pre-COVID to the new era. The technology we can't disregard. Technology is impacting all the industries, even for apparel industry, textile industry, that has changed. And retail world has changed completely from stores to a digital platform due to COVID reasons. So that has become a new trend. All the customers, even though they had their digital platform, that was strengthened further with COVID. And we have seen impressive change in digital platform retailers. So those are some of the factors that which is affecting the apparel industry. And with that, we need to be agile, and we need to work on those changes to move forward Sri Lanka to achieve $8 billion revenue target.
Thanks. Thank you, Pubudu. I will now switch to Adam. Adam, lot of apparel and fabric makers are basically shifting from China, as explained by Pubudu as well. So in terms of Hela, what is your experience, Adam, and is Sri Lanka capable of handling this demand, and what kind of resources do we need to have to take further advantage of this move?
Thanks, Damanta, and also thanks to First Capital to inviting me on this panel today. So I think just to put some context on it, I think the shift in apparel manufacturing out of China has been underway for some time. Like if you look at the export data, China's apparel exports have been in the decline since about 2013. But it is the case that issues around Xinjiang cotton and also the pandemic have really accelerated that process. So we are seeing that, and we do see that among our customers, right? But when an apparel brand looks at moving orders out of China, it's looking globally, right, at its requirements. So Sri Lanka is competing, with the usual players in Bangladesh, Vietnam, nearshore players when it's competing for those orders. So in terms of how Sri Lanka itself can stand out, I think for us, the real reputation that Sri Lanka has, which Pubudu also mentioned, in terms of sustainable and ethical manufacturing, is really key. Sri Lanka is a really trusted partner for many apparel brands in that space. In addition, Sri Lanka's technical expertise is really well known. So the ability to do relatively complex garments, as opposed to your more low-cost destinations, which don't have quite those technical capabilities. Those are the strengths on which Sri Lanka really has to play. I think the other point I would point out in terms of how Sri Lanka builds this and how Hela works on building and taking advantage of this is really building strategic relationships with your customers, right? So that's about offering them a kind of not just a manufacturing solution, you're offering them a lot more in terms of sourcing, and also building out a local supply chain, and kind of bringing those supply chain partners is also very important. So that, the companies like Hela and the other large Sri Lankan apparel manufacturers are also what will draw brands to Sri Lanka. Also provided that we can also offer them multi-country solutions as well. So they will put some orders in Sri Lanka for the products that make sense here. But if we can also, as one of their supplier base, offer them some other options out of Africa, for other different types of products, that also helps us sustain a really strong relationship with that company and ultimately benefit Sri Lanka as well. So there's like a real range of factors, but I think it's all about Sri Lanka playing to its strengths in what is a really globally competitive market.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Something that is significant with Hela is that, Adam, there is a significant presence in Africa, and we've not really seen that kind of exposure from most other Sri Lankan companies. So, if I may ask, what is the main strategy behind expanding into the African region, and what are like the challenges that you all had to face in operating in a African country?
Yeah, so Hela is a relatively new player on the block in terms of Sri Lankan apparel companies. And so when it was looking at its first overseas expansion in 2016, the management obviously considered, a range of options, of which the usual suspects were, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam. But if we had went to those countries at that stage, we would have been relative latecomers, right? And we wouldn't necessarily have been able to offer our customers, a kind of new and unique product or value offering in order to capture additional business. So really the decision was taken to, look at that next phase, look at what are the real emerging frontiers in terms of apparel manufacturing, which is where Africa really comes into play. We also saw that by being an early mover into that space, we could build that, expertise in that space and be a trusted partner for, key apparel brands as they look to shift more manufacturing into Africa. And that's definitely something that we've seen borne out in terms of how quickly our business in Africa is growing. So, now 5-6 years in, revenue generated out of our African factories is more or less, is close, just under 50% of our revenue. So it has been a strategy that's been really borne out, I think, for the company. And we do see additional growth and faster growth coming out of Africa as we go forward. In terms of the challenges of manufacturing in Africa, so I think the main ones I would refer to is, there's a host of kind of cultural and kind of situational challenges, which are a bit different to manufacturing in Asia. So in many of our African factories, so when an employee would join Hela, it would be the first time in which they've used a sewing machine, or it's in fact can be the first time in which they've had a formal sector job. So you're really starting at a very base level and building it up from there. So trying to cookie cutter what you're doing in, say, Sri Lanka and taking it to East Africa is not going to work. It's really all about how you cater it to that local culture and situation. That's, I think, something that Hela has been really successful at, and that's why we've been successful in East Africa where others have struggled, is really seeing how to make it and adjust your working practices to those kind of local factors. I think the other thing people will think about in terms of Africa, is a host of political or economic kind of larger, broader challenges, which of course are there. But I think what I would say, and those are not unusual in terms of emerging apparel sourcing destinations, and the brands are quite used to those. Managing those is all about having your risk mitigation strategies in place, your contingency plans, so that you can manage those risks because they are kind of always going to be there.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Adam. I would like to switch to Pubudu. Pubudu, now we know Teejay has predominantly been a cotton related fabric manufacturer, and now looking at even synthetic fabric manufacturing, and also there's this new trend, obviously the athleisure trend. So what is the reason behind this, and how successful has Teejay been in this road path to it? Also, I would like to ask basically to take consideration whether there is the US demand also in this factor.
Yes, actually, we started our synthetic operation in 2014. We started in small. The reason for that is customers are requesting different type of products and programs. There are different programs, and also we work with customer on these different programs. So to cater to customer demand request, we need to work on a different portfolio in different products. So that was the main reason. And the second thing, that was when we started in 2014, it was pretty small. But today, if you take Sri Lanka, we do about 10 to 15% of synthetic from out of Sri Lanka. In addition to that, we are starting synthetic manufacturing in India as well. That is the 20 tons additional capacity. What we have, the infrastructure is dual capable of machinery, which we can use for either cotton or synthetic. So that's a good news. So entire 20 tons, we can convert even for synthetic. The question why we went into synthetic is, if you look at total synthetic buy in Sri Lanka, it's about $750 million US. That was in 2020. So in which we produce less than $50 million US locally in Sri Lanka. The balance is imported. So there's a huge opportunity. This is expected to be 900 million in 2 years' time. So that was the reason. And cotton, if you see, even though total fabric and other accessories imports 2.3 billion, the fabric imports was 1.6, in which 1 billion is for cotton and balance 630 is for synthetic. That was in 2020. And the cotton fabric manufacturing also in 1 billion, locally what we produce is 350 million. And balance is imported. So Teejay Lanka overall, we do about 120 to 130 million US dollar business. Altogether, this year we will be achieving about 230 to 240 million revenue target. Then, as I said, India equation, the expansion, 20 tons expansion, we will be targeting on certain customers, especially on Uniqlo as a customer, which we have discussed. And the opportunity is getting into ARism and heat tech of some of the programs. So we have already started those programs. And there's a huge opportunity. And also customer demand, we have got into synthetic, and that's the reason.
Okay. Also, Pubudu, there's a question from one of our audience. Now, basically, US is sort of looking at tapering and managing their inflation, which may have an impact on global growth as well. So how does Teejay see that in terms of demand? Do you think there could be a slowdown in overall demand? What is your expectation, Pubudu?
It's not that simple to predict, but the trend says it's continuing.
I think there's a connection problem, I guess. So until Pubudu comes back, I think I'll switch to, oh yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear
Okay.
me.
So I think the demand, whatever the issues, there may be temporary setbacks, but that will pick up pretty fast, and we will be back to normal, and the demand will gradually increase.
Okay. So, okay. We have another question. I would like to direct that to Adam. So, Adam, the question is regarding a recent report by Sheffield Hallam University, naming brands and suppliers who are using Siginag cotton, and the major Sri Lankan players are mentioned in the report. So, whether there is any strategy to mitigate the negative impact by this report, what methods are taken to prove the cotton is sourced by these two companies are not from this Chinese region? That's the question by the audience.
Yeah, so we have actually, we also are directly in touch with Sheffield Hallam on that report and how we can best understand their findings. But what we do, I mean, the way we tackle this issue, and this has been an issue that is not new, it's been going on for 2 years plus, is we work very closely with our suppliers in terms of ensuring that those kind of issues are not present in our supply chain. And that is a real key requirement of our customers, that we commit to them on that. And we also require that commitment from all our suppliers as well. So it's really about building that partnership. I think ultimately, in many sectors and in apparel, supply chains for something like cotton is very complex. It can go through tens of stages before it ever reaches us, or even like a fabric manufacturer such as Pubudu. So I think there's also a real role for technology in this space in terms of improving traceability, right? And that's something that we're also actively working on. Is there's a number of potential solutions about how you literally trace a cotton thread from the farm in which it's grown straight through to the final garment. So I think those kind of two would be the two key pillars of the strategy.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. So, Pubudu, now we know that there are foreign currency requirements imposed by the central bank. So how does the fabric manufacturing sector coping with these requirements? I mean, we are going through a forex crisis as well. There are a component of imports also required for Teejay. How are you all managing the situation, Pubudu?
Currently, we are managing it, but sooner or later, that could be a problem. As you know that we are a US dollar earning companies. So at one point, there was concerns and whether we should be paid in Sri Lankan rupees or USD. And that has been cleared, and clearly we are paying in US dollars. So we are a US dollar company. So this time to time changing of the changes is not healthy, and even though it has been cleared. The second point is all the zones or the apparel zones in Sri Lanka is governed with BOI regulation. So this regulation should not be challenged time to time. So those things, I hope that will be corrected. But certain imports now, for example, local credit lines, banks credit lines, and opening of LC is a challenge with some of the banks. So those things we are taking as part and parcel of the challenges that we are facing. So we need to find out solutions to meet or navigate that and get into the destination that we wanted to be. But I think, yes, it's clearly a challenge. As we speak, we are managing it. I hope that will be resolved and there will be a permanent solution. But listening to the panelists, I don't know how fast that will be resolved. Anyway, it's a challenge, and I hope that exports, the government will take interest to look after export sector, because that is where we get even the dollars that we want, right? That's one of the main sources. So I hope that will be keep intact.
Thank you, Pubudu. Switching to Adam. Adam, now Hela is coming into an IPO, and one of the key areas that Hela is interested in utilizing its funds is entering into the fabric manufacturing space. So this is something, a new area of business. So we have 3 questions here, Adam. Now, where does Hela prefer to operate in terms of fabric manufacturing, in terms of Sri Lanka and Africa? And then what are the key factors that made Hela basically to decide to come into this space? And does Hela think that they have the capability to be successful in this space, considering that Hela is mostly into apparel manufacturing? Those are the 3 questions, Adam.
Thanks, Dimantha. So I won't quite take them in that order. I'll start with kind of the key factor driving our move into supply chain. And that's really all about supply chain security for us, supply chain resiliency. I mean, that was something that was there pre-pandemic, but sort of post-pandemic and the supply chain disruptions that we've seen in the past year, 18 months have really driven home the importance of having, greater control over your supply chain, right? And a related fact to that is supply chain localization, about having a local supply chain rather than having to spread it all across the world, because we've seen all the disruption that leaves you vulnerable to. So that's really the key factor driving it, aside from the fact that it is, a generally kind of consistent vertical integration strategy for the business in terms of building value. I think in terms of the location, so 25% of the IPO proceeds are earmarked for an investment in a fabric mill in Sri Lanka. So the reason for that is that we obviously do have a significant fabric requirement in Sri Lanka for our factories here. And in addition to that, given that, as you mentioned, it is a new business area for us, we want to focus on it in our home market and trying to learning the business before we take it to Africa. But taking it to Africa is a medium-term strategy, because as I mentioned, supply chain localization is key, and we can't be continuing to service our African factories out of Asia in terms of supplying them with fabric. So that's a really key kind of medium-term strategy. The rationale is that we start in Sri Lanka and we learn the sector in greater detail before we take it there. In terms of whether we have the expertise to manage that, so it really comes down to the way in which we're approaching this investment. So we'll be as part of a consortium, which will include a technical partner, which will have most of the responsibility for operating the mill. So they will be an experienced fabric mill operator. And so from day-to-day operations, they will have that oversight and expertise, so that we don't necessarily need to learn that entirely. And then what we can bring to the table is kind of that long-term order book, so that they can also plan out in terms of capacity allocations. So that's really how we're balancing that strategy of gaining supply chain security, while also getting into a kind of new business area in a cautious and risk mitigated manner.
Okay. Thank you, Adam, for that explanation. So we are almost coming to the end of this session. I will direct my final questions to both the panelists. So Pubudu, the final question to you is that, Teejay is on a journey to reach USD 300 million. And do you know that there is some sort of expansion also happening in India? So can you explain your overall strategy in achieving that? What type of expansions are you planning here to achieve, and any sort of innovations that you all are planning to move into?
Well, we took almost 13 years to reach up to $100 million mark from the inception, and then next 100 million up to 200 million came in 5 years time with the acquisition of Teejay India and Teejay Prints. So today we are a $200 million company with the capacity footprint in Sri Lanka 40 tons and India 35 tons, and Teejay Prints will be doing about 500 to 600,000 meters. That's a 200 million capacity footprint. And then we started Teejay India expansion to add another 20 tons of capacity from 35 tons to 55 tons. That capacity expansion is in progress, and we are at the last stages. So first quarter we will, this quarter we will have, this quarter we will have about 25% of the capacity which we are installing in India. So once we complete the expansion, it will be 55 tons in India, and also 40 to 45 tons capacity we have in Sri Lanka, and the outsourced locations that we are working on. Altogether, it will be 100 to 105 tons capacity. So theoretically, we have $300 million footprint in our with the capacity expansions that we have in place. The aspiration was 2022-23 was the aspiration. So as I mentioned earlier, this year we will be in the range of 240 million. That is with very little capacity expansion in place. And once it's in fully operation, I think theoretically we have $300 million capacity. So whether we achieve that or whether we miss it in a small margin doesn't matter because we have a capacity, and then we will look beyond that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Pubudu. I will move to Adam, and my last question to you, Adam, is that there are continuously new trends emerging in every industry. So basically, what are the new emerging trends in the apparel industry that Hela is targeting to take advantage of, and how do you see the competition that with other countries that you're facing?
Yeah, so I think many of the challenges or kind of changes and trends that we're seeing are ones that have been kind of incubating for some time and are now really kind of becoming the pressing ones. I think maybe the first one would be that need for speed that our customers are asking for. Again, that's partly to do with like shortening their supply chain and making their inventory management easier. But we are seeing a real drive towards speed and also to nearshoring. And that is really a big trend that we're seeing, which is why we're as a company, in the process of establishing operations in Egypt, right? So we can give that solution to Europe and North America. So that would probably be the first one. I think the other one really is around building resilience in supply chains, which is really where our supply chain investment strategy is really coming into play. And that will be something that will continue to be key going forward, in ensuring that in any location that we're operating in, we have a strong local supply chain, be that with our involvement or without. And that will also be key. And I think probably the final larger point I would make is there is a general move with apparel brands in terms of their sourcing to move away from kind of day-to-day transactional relationships and purely basing their orders on cost. It is becoming a lot more about building strategic relationships with the brand, giving them a variety of solutions that they don't need to go to different players for. That's why having a kind of multi-country origin footprint is a strength. And actually that kind of thing is something that Sri Lankan apparel manufacturers do very well. And so really looking at it globally, I wouldn't identify any particular country that's a real challenger, but it's really how do we have the real champion companies that can offer these solutions for global apparel brands, which brings the orders into Sri Lanka as well.
Okay. And the more important question, Adam, so when is Hela going to get listed?
Very soon. So yesterday, the refunds were completed and the allocation basis was announced. So very shortly, the first trading date will be announced as well.
Thank you, Adam. So that comes to the end of our Q&A session. I would like to thank Mr. Pubudu De Silva and also Mr. Adam Collins for taking their time and coming here to basically provide as much as information about the industry and their companies to our investors.